The Bruxellian elite, aided by the entirety of the European disinformation complex, is busy these days utterly demonizing Poland. Apparently, the judicial reforms being drafted and prepared to be passed and enforced in the Third Polish Republic are totalitarian and mean and anti-democratic and sexist, and they undermine the independence of the judiciary. No, seriously, that's what the European Commission said, and the lapdogs in the Cathedral reported it, but never questioned it. But what if the European Commission is full of, well, horse manure? What if the Eurocrats have other motives and reasons to impede upon the reforms in the Polish judiciary? What if what you read in the English and German language media about Poland these days is almost entirely the opposite from the truth? Let's explore. Hello everyone and welcome to the Freedom Alternative. Alright, so let's talk about a topic that is not exactly popular outside of Poland, with the exception of those of us who are news junkies, both on the right and on the wrong side of the political spectrum. So, a few days ago, well, more like a bit over a week by the time this video gets published, the European Commission sent a letter of formal notice to the government in Warsaw in which the unelected and the unaccountable bureaucracy in Brussels was informing the elected and accountable government in Warsaw that the former will launch an infringement procedure upon the latter over concerns on the independence of Polish courts being undermined by increased power for the justice ministers, as well as concerns of gender discrimination due to the introduction of a different retirement age for female and male judges. Now, I won't address the gender nonsense. Most of Europe has different retirement ages for women and men. I'm not saying this is fair, but I am saying that the European Commission can shove it with its sanctimonious moral posturing on this topic. When I'll see the European Commission doing the same to Austria, Finland, or the United Kingdom, then we might start believing that the Commission genuinely cares about this. But until then, this whole gender discrimination posturing is just silly, and everybody knows it. Alright, so before addressing the other concern, a little bit of a background story is needed. The hit pieces and the lies about Poland have been a consistent feature in the Cathedral media since October 2015, when Prawo i Sprawiedliwość swept the polls and became the ruling party, in addition to also winning the presidency. And I predicted at the time that this will be the case. Here's what I was saying back in October 2015 about what to expect after the elections. Remember, this was taped right after the vote, but before the new government had been sworn in, and also before knowing Donald Trump will be president.
Now, with that out of the way, let's get to practicalities. What does this mean for the politics of Europe in the upcoming period? Well, it means trouble for Brussels and the internationalist ideologues. For starters, Law and Justice is staunchly pro-US and pro-NATO, and as it is most of the country. Once a more sane president will come at the White House, hopefully, that combination is going to mess up quite a lot of the plans that Brussels and Berlin have in mind. More trouble for Brussels will come on social issues as well, since Law and Justice government is extremely unlikely to cooperate with Brussels on issues such as LGBTism, eco-Marxism, or anti-Christian bigotry. On economics, Law and Justice is going to be a mixed bag. On one hand, they have their highly sound economic stance of refusing to join the Eurozone. On the other hand, they want to spend more on welfare and finance that spending with some new taxes on banks. Now that, I don't think it's a good idea at all. What I also predict is that the number of anti-Polish hit pieces in the British media will become a lot more commonplace. You see, the British media is largely left-wing progressive, and the Daily Mail is a shit-stirrer with an anti-immigrant bias. Now that's a perfect recipe to get a lot more anti-Polish hit pieces once the new government is installed and starts enacting its terribly un-PC policies.
Well, all of that did happen. The Cathedral became almost universally hostile to Poland, the country's foreign policy shifted to the right heavily, the Intermarium project became serious again, and on economics, the new power has been a mixed bag. But more than that, the new power also strived to keep its big campaign promises, namely to further pursue energy independence and reform the judiciary. And this didn't quite bode well with the old establishment, particularly the Magistrates Corporation, as the Polish analyst Branislaw Wilczstein called it in an interview with Linia Drapta. Now, speaking of that interview, the English translation of that interview is also available in video format on this channel, and if you prefer text format, my translation has in the meantime been published on ILD as well. You should probably read or listen to that interview because it contains a lot of details about how the judiciary in Poland currently works and why and how the new power is hoping to improve it. If you're not gonna watch that, the short version is this. Nobody in Poland trusts the courts. They are at the level they used to be here in Romania before we created the Anti-Corruption Directorate and started sweeping the commies and putting them in jail. This never happened in Poland, and as a result, the deeply conservative and mentally sane population doesn't trust the courts. The court system runs entirely as a closed one. It's like a black box from which decisions simply emerge. It's almost as secretive as the process through which the Pope is elected. And there are no serious and reliable mechanisms by which the rest of the society can influence anything there. Think of the British family courts in early 2000s, but even worse than that. So what the new power is trying is to open the courts a little bit, to give some influence to the society as well. This process is very normal and it happens everywhere. The European Commission says the Ministry of Justice would have more power. Well, that's true, but nobody has been willing to explain what is wrong with that. There has also been a bill surprisingly vetoed by President Andrzej Duda, which would also include some controls from the parliament over at least some of the top judges. The Cathedral will have you believe that this is a takeover by the political power of the judiciary, thus rendering Poland a third world banana republic. But is it really the case? Because if that is the argument, then France, Germany, and the Netherlands are also banana republics. Now, incidentally, I actually do believe that about France, but for other reasons. But I digress. So let's give some examples. In Germany, the candidates for the position of judge in the Federal Court of Justice, the Federal Labor Court, the Federal Fiscal Court, and other federal tribunals, the candidates are appointed by the Federal Minister of Justice and a commission of 32 members, of which 16 of them are elected by the parliament, and the other 16 are the justice ministers in the states that compose Germany, the so-called Bundesländer. Then these candidacies are approved by the federal government, and from these, the President of Germany chooses one of them. The entirety of this process is political, all of it, and the Justice Minister has the veto vote. By comparison, the reforms proposed in Poland are significantly less extreme than this. Yet for some reason, we're supposed to believe that it's okay in Germany for this to be done this way, but not okay in Poland. Really, they really do believe we're that stupid. And we're also supposed not to notice these realities, and we're also supposed to pretend that there is no agenda at play. Now, the reason I pick on Germany is because the German state has been one of the biggest protesters against the Polish reforms. Well, I'm sorry, but if you're gonna crap on Poland for trying to become essentially more German, you being Germany, you'd better have a serious reason for that. Well, other than mere feelings and the fact that the German interests in Poland might be hurt with a more serious and open judiciary, that is. Here's another example, France. Now, Macron decried the so-called rise of authoritarianism in Poland and criticized the judicial reforms because, again, they give too much power to politicians. Really, Monsieur Macron? How about you take a look in your own backyard? Because in France, the appointments of judges are made by the Conseil Supérieur de la Magistrature, identical with the Romanian Consiliul Superior al Magistratului, in which the President of the Republic is a member and also gets to appoint half of the council. Basically, no matter what, the majority will always be on the president's side, will always be presidential. Translation: the appointment process is political. And that's fine in France, and has been fine since 1993 when this system was put in place. No European Commission infringement process. Poland does it, now that's suddenly a problem. Now give me a freaking break. And again, the French process is actually more political than what the power in Warsaw wants to do. In France, the inspection of all of the courts is accountable solely to the President of the Republic, and the inspectors are appointed by the President without any input from the High Council of the Judiciary. And that's fine. And again, it has been fine with everyone, including to the European Commission, for the last 24 years. So what exactly is the problem then? Well, this is where we get into slightly speculative terrain, although not by much. One way to look at this is to look who is protesting and how it is being reported. Now, mind you, this is not the first pan-European campaign against the Prawo i Sprawiedliwość government. If you remember, a while ago there was the hysteria about the abortion law. At that time, we were told that hundreds of thousands of progressive, youthful pro-abortionists were marching in the streets to stop the bill. Now, the reality was marginally different. Most of those believed that the current abortion law, which is the most restrictive in Europe, banning abortion on demand in virtually all cases, most of the people in the streets believed the current law was good enough and was no need to make it even tougher. But we didn't get that part of the story because that would have ruined the narrative that the young people are on the left, which, by the way, is simply not true in Poland. In fact, over 60% of 18 to 25-year-olds voted or will vote for Prawo i Sprawiedliwość. With the right, that is. It's one of those hate facts that ruin the leftist narrative. Anyway, so this is not the first time, and I suspect not the last time either, when the huge and well-financed false civil society, the very far-left network of NGOs, is orchestrating a campaign. For example, CNN was reporting on July the 23rd the following, quote, "Protests spread to more than 100 cities in Poland on Saturday after a bill that would give its populist government the power to push all the nation's Supreme Court judges into retirement passed the upper house of the National Assembly," close quote. Now, this is what I call scientific lying. 50% truth, 30% lies, 20% spin. First of all, there are no 100 cities in Poland. There are exactly 11 localities that exceed 250,000 inhabitants. Now, if you apply a very loose definition of city, namely at least 50,000 inhabitants, that still moves the balance up to around 80. So more than 100 cities in Poland is intentional spin at best, or a lie at worst. And without making it clear, this gives the impression in the mind of the public that there are hundreds of thousands of people in the streets of over 100 places protesting this bill, an impression which has nothing to do with reality. I mean, after all, this whole business with appointing judges in top courts, this is a technocratic thing about which most people don't know or don't care. And this is true universally. I mean, if you think your average Joe in, Pickering, North Yorkshire gives a damn about how Theresa May or Westminster in general chooses the judges in Greater London, I have a bridge to sell to you. CNN and The Guardian and many others would have you believe that your average Joe in Wodzisław Śląski can't really properly eat his dinner over concerns that the Minister of Justice might appoint the wrong judge in some appellate court 700 kilometers away from him. Really? What is actually the case is that the special interest groups including and especially the Corporation of the Magistrates, aided by the network of far-left NGOs, are in the middle of an agitprop operation. And you don't have to believe me, you just have to look at the pictures and the footage from the protests and notice that the main driver is an organization called Acția Democrația. Now, this group is part of a larger group of NGOs called the Open Network. Now, although it resembles George Soros's Open Society, this is not necessarily his project. This one is slightly different in terms of organization, but otherwise identical in purpose: to advance far-left agendas. The Open Network was founded by MoveOn.org in the United States, Skiftet from Sweden, Compact from Germany, 38 Degrees from the United Kingdom, an NGO that claims to have millions of members in the UK and which is notorious for its rent-a-mob services, and also 3 other organizations from Ireland, New Zealand, and Australia, about which I have to admit I don't know anything. Now, besides these funding members and Acția Democrația, the Open Network includes far-left organizations from other countries such as South Africa, Austria, Italy, Israel, Switzerland, and Romania. Now, the problem, from what a Polish follower reported to me, is that the Polish Cathedral actually takes these schmucks seriously. Their chapter, for instance, in Romania has been laughed off the stage from day one, even by leftists. And I have to admit, that was fun to watch. So, in essence, what happens now in Poland in terms of protests is an unholy alliance between the post-communist leftist elite, the special interests of the Magistrates Corporation, the rent-a-mob services of a far-left network of NGOs, and the Bruxellian bureaucracy, all working in conjunction to defeat the agenda of the democratically elected government in Poland. Now, you will excuse me if I'll side with the government on this one. Now look, I'm not saying the current Polish government didn't do nothing, or that they're a bunch of saints. They are, of course, none of these. One should actually look for saints in churches and not in politics. But I am saying that between the militant ideological beliefs of a bunch of unelected and unaccountable nobodies, mostly from outside Poland, and the very moderate and commonsensical reforms proposed by a duly elected government, the choice is obvious. And if they're wrong, the public will get a chance to kick them to the curb by November 2019 at the latest. Meanwhile, these NGO rent-a-mob subverters are accountable to exactly nobody in Poland. Ditto for the Bruxellian cucks. Jaroslaw Silin, a Polish culture minister, had it right when he said, quote, "Those at the head of the European Commission tend to be politicians without a strong democratic mandate, retired politicians at home, often politically bankrupt," close quote, which is absolutely true. The president of the Commission, Jean-Claude Juncker, is a chap who lost the elections in Luxembourg. He's quite literally a nobody. Now, if I were to run for office, I would get more votes than Juncker in his entire life combined. Same with the chap that leads the EU protests against Poland, Frans Timmermans, a career bureaucrat from the Netherlands who has done such a tremendous job that his political party, Partij van de Arbeid, came in 7th in the 2017 Dutch elections with less than 6% of the vote, losing 29 or 30 MPs, which is a lot in a parliament of 150 seats. So who the hell is Frans Timmermans, literally a political nobody in his country, to tell a government that holds 51% of the parliament in another country anything about anything? I mean, seriously, it's like I would try to advise Michael Jordan on basketball. He would rightfully ask me, "I'm sorry, but who the hell are you?" The same applies here. And the selection process at the top of the EU is actually a counter-selection process. The more of a political failure you are, the more likely you are to be fielded for a top position in the European Union. So it's basically a protest of the losers against the winners. That's exactly what it is. But you won't hear that from the Cathedral media, because it's not good for the narrative. Ultimately, the power in Warsaw will have to get used to it and swiftly dismiss it. Because for the time being, these kinds of shenanigans aren't going anywhere. Orban learned this, and so should everyone else who wants to lead in directions that don't fit the European Union of Soviet Socialist Republics straitjacket. Yes, the Pravo i Sprawiedliwość party is imperfect. Yes, they sometimes say stupid shit. But that's not reason enough to lie about their policies or to be a disdainful hypocrite like the European Commission and impute malice on them when they try to pass policies that are identical or more moderate than the ones in many other EU member states. Alright, so that's basically the whole issue here. I was unsure whether I would or should make this video, but I got hit by a torrent of Guardian lies on social media, so that was enough to make me grab the keyboard and prepare a video for this. Mind you, this is not the first time I talk about this. I will leave in the low bar several other videos that I made about the Cathedral lying. For instance, I fully do recommend you watch the video Jan Kubik and the Guardian style of lying that I published back in February, which also touches upon how the Cathedral lies about the countries of the Intermarium. Anyway, with all of that being said, thank you all for watching. Please tell me in the comments what did I miss. Follow me on Gab, Twitter and Facebook. I will also remind you that the Georgia-Armenia tour starts in just a few days, so please do consider sending a shekel for that endeavor. And I'll see you all very soon on Freedom Alternative.